So good morning, everybody. It's Friday, and we are excited to get together today just to have a discussion and a chat about a topic that is extremely important and that my personal opinion needs to be talked about weekly. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marty Mercado, and I am the Director of Development here at Aging Matters in Brevard. And we're super excited to have these ladies today to discuss with us World Elder Abuse Awareness. So World Elder Abuse Day happened this week. It was Monday on June 15th, and it was started in 2006. And my personal platform for this topic is to make sure that we talk about it all the time. I feel like the more we talk about it, the more awareness we bring, the more people will reach out and try to get help. I had a personal experience with this with a family member. And at the time when I was going through it and trying to solve the problems of what was happening, it was very cloudy, very fuzzy. And I needed to reach out to experts. And I got that help. And so I have the experts in front of us here. So we're hoping that today you'll get some strong advice and you'll be driven to help somebody. If you see something, say something if you need to, and protect our seniors in the community. So we have four ladies. We have Amanda HERRNKIND, who is, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves a little bit too, but Amanda's here from St. Francis. She's the in community engagement. I have Theresa Russell, who is the Senior Human Service Program Specialist with DCF. I have Jennifer CHANEY, who is with Aging Matters in Brevard. She's our Client Service Coordinator. And then I have PAULA SCHROEDER, who is our Communication Manager here at Aging Matters in Brevard. So let's start with you, Amanda. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do in the community.
Well, like you said, I work for Hospice of St. Francis presently, and I've been with that organization, which is a not-for-profit hospice provider here in Brevard for the past going on 6 years. Veterans Day is actually my work anniversary, ironically.
Wow.
I do focus on veteran affairs and outreach within the community here, and I've been beautifully embraced by that population. My first 5 years with Hospice of St. Francis was as a clinical social worker, you know, having my own caseload and that sort of thing. And out of grad school, actually, I went right into working with geriatrics at a nursing facility here locally as well. So I've gotten a lot of great opportunities to see kind of from start to finish what caring for an aging individual looks like, you know, being able to handle it at home, you know, to the long-term placement and then to the hospice piece. So a lot of great experience in that regard, and I'm very grateful to be able to have really just the opportunity and the gift to work with these people at this intimate time of their lives and hopefully help them walk through it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Theresa, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, hi, good morning. I'm Theresa Russell. I am a Senior Human Services Program Specialist with Department of Children and Families, Adult Protective Services Central Region. So there are 5 of us, I believe, 4 of us in our region, but we handle Central Region. My background is I've been with DCF or the state, because back when I first started it was HRS, since 1977. So I started on the children's side, started in Miami, which is my hometown, working with children, intake counselor down there. And then worked through, I've done foster care and adoptions, I've done training, I did mental health therapy with children in foster care and ended up in adults. So in my career, I've kind of made the big circle. So I like it though, because it gives me a good overview of all the services that are available and what the state's been doing for us. But I pretty much had my whole career working with the state and working in that kind of format. Been with adults now since I believe 2004, and started as an investigator, then a supervisor, then got involved in doing community work and working with other agencies within the community. And I've kind of made it my passion and goal to kind of unite everybody. That's a lot of people, including the people who are in the field, don't know all the things available, all the services and all their resources. So that's kind of what I try to do, is get everybody together and talk about what we need and share resources and ideas for how we can help, because it takes all of us, it takes the whole community to make this work.
It does.
So I love that I'm here with all my great friends that I've been working with for years, and that we're having a chance to share this. It's so important because as a DCF employee, I can't tell you the number of times our investigators will go out, or even our service counselors will knock on a door and say, hi, state of Florida DCF. And the first thing that adult says is, no children here, and shuts the door, and does not understand at all that children and families, that families part is not just parents, but grandparents and aunties and uncles and everybody else. So it's just great to be with a group of people and spread the word. Yeah, we're out here, and we have services, and we have ideas, and we have ways to help.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Jennifer, want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, I'm Jennifer CHANEY. I'm currently with Aging Matters as a client service coordinator, but my main background is case management. I came from the children aspect. I used to work for Early Learning Coalition for numerous years on the children's side with the parents, and making a flip over to the adult side, having been in the situation and I'm working with them out in the field and in the community, gives me a great deal of respect, not only to honor them, but to also to make sure that they can age in place and give them the resources and benefits that they need to live a functional life. My background with medical has been since I was 18 years old. And so I've been doing it for a numerous amount of years, and having a degree in healthcare has gave me a broad, a huge outlook and aspect of the elderly community. I've grown to love that community. And so it's became a joy. I still do work with families with the smaller children, been a liaison for the Pregnancy Resource Center for my community here in Brevard, but being with Aging Matters and working in that community to help the adults, to help the aging overcome that prospect of being in vulnerable situations. So I really enjoy that. And I do get to work with APS from time to time, and being able to close those cases within the 72-hour mark. It's not the easiest, but it's doable, and it's rewarding afterwards.
That's wonderful. Thank you. All right. And then finally, Paula. Paula, you want to tell us a little bit about your background? And
Sure. It's very interesting that I think 4 of the 5 of us have background in children's services. So before I came to Aging Matters in 2015, I worked with an organization that's now called Neighbor Up, which is in the Booker T. Washington area. It's a community center for kids after school program. And so I worked with them for several years. And prior to that, I owned a daycare center in Palm Bay that had a Head Start program. So I've also worked with young children and with families. But I have to say that I'm really enjoying my work with the seniors now too. What I do at Aging Matters is I wear a number of different hats. The biggest part of it is I work on grants. So I do a lot of in-office things. But I also coordinate the Pets on Wheels program, where we deliver pet food to our Meals on Wheels clients who want and need it for their really, really important cats and dogs. They're often the only companion that they have. So we want to make sure that they're taken care of, as well as our seniors. And then the other thing I do Before COVID, I taught classes called Living Healthy with a Chronic Disease, Living Healthy with Diabetes, and also a Matter of Balance Fall Prevention Program. And that brought people together in a classroom for 6 to 8 weeks. Really ends up being a support group, a great social event for our seniors, and also gives them some good tips on, like Jennifer said, and keeping people living healthy in their own homes for as long as possible. So that's just a little snapshot of what I do. I found that if you just sit and listen to our older adults, oh my goodness, you will learn so much, get so much history, be absolutely amazed at the lives that people in our community have led. And that's the real joy of working with this community.
Yeah, I think that's a super important point. And I like that you guys are talking about aging in place and being able to stay at home, especially with COVID right now. I think that's changed the dynamics of how things are going to look. I also think it's going to change the topic of how elder abuse is and what's happening. The adjustment to COVID is still happening. I think it's going to be continuing for a while. So I think that that's important that we remember as we talk today that our whole goal here is to keep you at home, to be able to age in place and have the support needed for the caregivers as well as our seniors. And, we've all been there before. Caregiving can be exhausting. It can be exhausting, and we need to make sure that our caregivers understand that they need to take breaks. They need to look for support in the community. And so that's probably going to be a whole nother topic at a later date, but I think it all starts here. So ladies, I want to start out by just asking a general question, and I apologize, I must put on my reading glasses because he's sat there in my life. So what is elder abuse and how do you see it when you're working in the community? So give us some examples and what you're seeing in the field that you're working in right now.
I could fill hours with that. That's what we do mostly, is dealing with it and the different types of it. I think a lot of that is why we try to educate as much as we can, because not everybody who becomes an abuser started out that way. That wasn't their intention, but maybe through ignorance or lack of sleep or any number of issues. Bad things happen to good people, just like good things happen to bad people.
Mm-hmm. Good. Anybody else?
I think it's important to note. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, Amanda. You're okay.
I think it's important to note that it manifests in different ways. It's not just a physical altercation or, the fact that you may have checked on somebody Monday and then Wednesday when you go by for your next visit, they have a bruise of unknown origin. It can also be, abandonment, neglect, money exploitation, things like that are kind of, hidden, silent forms of abuse, if you will. So sometimes you really have to kind of peel back the layers, and unless there's a social worker or somebody, involved, or a family member that sees something shady going on, you may not even realize it's happening until it's a little too late and the person's really been exploited.
Okay.
I think that I'm sorry, Jennifer, I know you were going to jump in, but I just wanted to add on to what Amanda said. I think that it's almost every single person who is, older than 60 or 65 has had at least somebody attempt to do a financial scam on them. And that's abuse.
Mm-hmm.
The seniors are being targeted because these scammers know that, they may be lonely, they may just want someone to talk to, and they've got a really good pitch. And that's something that is, people, I could sit in a room and get 10 stories from 10 people.
Yeah.
And they've all gotten these calls, and we probably have too.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when you're older, you can kind of get confused, or somebody can play on your emotions, and all of a sudden, you're out thousands of dollars. And it doesn't mean that you're naive or that you don't understand. They're just very, very good at that. And it's getting worse and worse. Amanda, I'm sure you know that there are scams specifically targeted at veterans, saying that they're, entitled to some benefit or something. They just have to give the caller their social security information.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the really, really troubling things that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it too is our parents' generation was a generation of trust.
Yeah.
Yes.
That you did things on a handshake, that when somebody said something to you, your word is your bond. That was kind of how they were raised. And they don't understand how someone who shouldn't have as much information about them gets it.
Yes.
And the internet and the other ways,
Yeah.
it's very easy to get pretty much someone's life story, especially if they're on Facebook or some of the other social media things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when someone calls and says, hi, this is, Joe, your grandson. Well, they got that information maybe from somebody's Facebook picture. Mm-hmm. So and again, our seniors don't understand, well, if they didn't know me, how would they have all this information?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a new world out there, and how we have to protect ourselves.
Jennifer, did you want to add something?
No, thank you. That's okay.
Well, and I think it's important too, with the way we're communicating now and checking on our seniors. And I'm going to use my mom as an example. We now communicate. We do a lot of communication through Facebook and just like we're doing right now. So it doesn't, my personal opinion, it doesn't hurt to just have that safety talk and help them understand. Help my mom's doing great. She's got it now, but help them understand that Facebook, they can get a lot of information off of Facebook, and to be aware if someone's calling. Those conversations I think are extremely important. And it's fun too. And now my mom is like super Facebook savvy, and so it's fun to see her like everything and, comment, and it's a great way to communicate. So it can be a positive experience, but we definitely have to have those discussions so that everybody understands. And and to just reiterate too, that they're very savvy. We had a person reach out to a family member that was extremely savvy, and it sounded like it was a golden deal. And luckily we were able to stop the situation, but they're called con artists for a reason, right?
You are very lucky, because embarrassing enough, I go out and train on scams and exploitation, and I talk about it all the time. And my mom lost quite a bit of money believing that she had won a lottery, and she just kept paying. And it was a whole soap opera they had her involved in, where the people had the cash and were bringing it and got to the airport and then took off to Jamaica. So she needed to hire attorneys in Jamaica. It was quite it was exciting for her, because it was this whole thing going on. She was a millionaire and all these things were happening. And I didn't find out about it until much too late, because my family in Miami was dealing with it. And it was like, well, how were you dealing with it? And they were, well, we were telling her not to do that. Well, it's more than just telling someone not to do something.
Right.
It's getting on their level to explain to them and to bring them to their own realization. My mom raised 7 kids. You're not going to tell her to do anything.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. And I like the word tell. My mom is very headstrong, and I'm not going to tell her anything. And I still, she'll point her finger. If I hear my whole name, I know I'm in trouble. But at the same time, we're able to have a communication about, just a conversation, have that conversation about social media. And, I pitched it as it's changing every day. We're all changing every day with social media. So it was a good conversation. But again, I agree with you, Theresa. I'm not going to be able to call my mom and say, hey, this is how it's going to be. We have to have a communication about it. Yeah. Still my mom. So Theresa, tell me, what do you feel, give me some, maybe 2 or 3 causes, very direct causes of why elder abuse happens. in our community? Are there stressors involved? You know, I have to believe that in some cases, people have started out and they did not expect this to happen. They don't expect to lose their temper, or they don't expect something to happen. What are some causes that we're seeing here in Brevard County?
Well, do you
I
have
would
the,
say the potential of, is that question directed to you, Theresa? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It was, but
Oh, go
feel free to
ahead.
jump
I
in.
apologize. I totally missed the name. Go right ahead, Theresa.
oh, Jen, jump
I
in anytime.
Anytime.
There are the deliberate ones, which are people being malicious or greedy, those kind of things. But then you fall into the people who have good intentions, but through their own lack of knowledge of resources or how to handle a situation, or have the skill to deal with someone's ongoing or deterioration of a condition, that abuse and neglect and even exploitation can occur. I can't tell you the number of exploitation cases we have where someone is trying to protect mom or dad from scammers, and they found out they were giving them money. So they go in their bank account, they take money out of their bank account and put it in an account that that person does not have access to. Well, according to Florida State Statute 415, that's exploitation. You can't take money or assets from a person and put it someplace where they can't access it. Cases where people don't want mom or dad driving anymore because they don't feel like they're safe to drive anymore. So they take their car keys or they take their car. Well, that's exploitation. Only Department of Transportation can say this person can't drive anymore. You don't have the right to take somebody's property, their assets, even if you feel it's for a good reason. So learning about how to do that properly is important. We have a lot of people who got kind of put into a caregiver position, not because they chose it, but out of what they felt was necessity. Mom and dad or whoever has had an incident, a fall, needs someone to care for them. And someone says, okay, well, I'll stay home and care for them. And then you realize that it's 24/7, 365 days a year. Nobody works that. Right. If you're in a facility, there are 3 shifts of people to help you. And the reason there are 3 shifts of people is because when you get tired, you're going to have less patience. You're going to be more vulnerable yourself to react in a negative way when something happens. Yeah. The number of times where somebody will be behind someone using a walker or a cane and say, if they just would walk a little faster, and they try to scoot them along and that person falls and gets hurt. That wasn't the intention. But so kind of understanding those things, and as said, getting help with the care of that person, giving yourself that break, getting that other assistance in there. Family trauma and drama, one of my favorites. Yeah. That someone always thinks they can do a better job than the person who's doing it. And then that becomes this tug of war, and it's not good for anybody. So all those things can contribute to elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation without even that person trying. I mean, that was not their intention. They had good intentions. And I really, my heart just sinks when I hear that I promised dad or I promised mom I would never put their spouse in a facility. Yeah. But that spouse is to a place now where they need 24/7 attention. They need help getting out of bed. They need to be turned because now they're bedridden. They need proper. And as much as you love that person and you would try to keep them in your home, sometimes that's not feasible and it's not what's best for their health. So maybe placing them in a facility and visiting them every day and making sure you know who's caring for them and they're getting the best attention possible is the best thing you can do for that person. It all depends on level of care. So people trying to take on too much, I think is a big component of that.
And you know, it's interesting, when I had 3 solid years of caregiving, and my grandfather was the last of my family to pass away. And I was Superwoman. and I'm saying that sarcastically, I felt like that I owed it to him to give him the best possible care by my hands, because he was an amazing person to me. He was a veteran, fought in World War II. I mean, the list can go on. And I had someone from, he passed away in St. Petersburg, and I had someone from the hospice program I was at take my hands, walk me outside, set me down on the grass and say, you got to stop. You have to stop. You have to allow us to help. You're exhausted. This could eventually turn into neglect because you are exhausted and you're not. And at my very first initial response was anger. And then she just continued to look me in the eyes and she's like, we're going to do this together. And I think that that's super important because I have extensive background with a whole bunch of things that would qualify me to be a great caregiver for my grandfather. But at that moment, you know, not that I would ever do anything to harm him, but at that moment, my judgment was so cloudy that I needed some help. And I think that that's important. And a great point is that caregiver fatigue, especially when you're dealing with end of life, is there, and it needs to be acknowledged, and you need some help with it. So that's a great way to roll into you, Amanda. I know that you work with our local veterans, and they definitely have some special situations. And we had briefly talked on the phone this week about this whole conversation. And you had two words for me that has really changed my life and the way I think about things. We were talking about PTSD specifically, but you called it soul injury. Correct. And I really like that word, and I like the respect that it gives to our veterans for what they've done for our country. So can you tell us a little bit about how this whole elder abuse looks for the veterans in our community here in Brevard County, what we're seeing, because we know working with someone with a soul injury has its own set of difficultness about it. So fill us in and let us know what's happening here in Brevard and what we should be aware of.
Well, through my experiences and the education I've been blessed to receive through moving through the We Honor Veteran program, which is a partnership with the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, that soul injury piece came from that education. And basically what it is describing is that not only individuals who have seen combat or maybe had a traumatic situation where they would be classified as having PTSD, they can also have what is considered a soul injury. And ultimately that's defined by that they are put into a situation because of their duty, their job assignment in whatever armed force branch they may be in, where they are faced with the decision to do what is best for the greater good. And it may be something that normally goes against their moral compass, their personal ethic, their faith, their belief in who they are as an individual, but ultimately it is a task they have to carry out for their own safety, for the safety of their brothers and sisters in their unit. Certainly if they're deployed, we saw, very devastating situations after 9/11, as you know, with women and children approaching our armed forces overseas with bombs. And, obviously these men and women would not have made the choice to harm someone, especially a woman or a child, on their daily walk to the grocery store. But yet their job at that time, in order to protect our freedoms and be able to promote the lifestyle that we are, fortunate enough to live here in this country, they had to make those choices, and come home and then basically kind of just be put right back into society. And without much debriefing, without much counseling. In the Vietnam era, who is our highest percentage of aging population right now, and they're also beginning to have what are, I guess, kind of secondary injuries, if you will, to their combat service, and they're manifesting in ways of cancers, dementias, things like that, because of exposures that they may have had when they were over there on that foreign soil, or even in foreign waters, not even on the Vietnamese land. But they're starting every year, even just in the last you know, 12 months where I've been working very, very intimately with these veterans, there have been more and more benefits that are rolling out because of exposures that they're seeing. So with that being said, there's an abundant amount of resources that people don't know about that are available that can help people be cared for in their home and or in a nursing facility or assisted living facility, so they can continue, again, to age in place, to, you know, kind of refocus on that benefit. But also, it warrants a more hyper-focused need for the individual that is caring for that person, whether it be a family member or a hired caregiver or a hospice worker or a home health worker, to have mindfulness of what that person's history is, and whether they obtain that history from the individual themselves. Hopefully, you know, if they're able to share their own story, they're willing and able to do that. You have to be very slow and go about trying to kind of open up some of those old wounds respectfully and with dignity. Otherwise, if the person can't tell you themselves, then hopefully there's a family member or maybe a guardian or someone that has access to a DD-214, which is a discharge paper, you know, from the military service, that can provide you with a little bit of information about where that person may have been stationed, what their job was. And that's a big piece for the military, is what their job was. You know, it could have been a cook on a submarine, but you know what? That person is just as important as the gunner in World War II. You know, it doesn't matter what the job was. They all have to have their role in order to make the whole system work and fulfill the goal that, you know, ultimately rewards us as U.S. citizens. So that mindfulness, I would say, is the biggest piece. Just when you're giving a shower, making sure you don't kind of walk up behind someone, make a loud noise. You hear, you know, we have 4th of July coming. It is very, very true that these men and women do not really care for fireworks.
Yeah.
Just as some of our fur babies don't care for fireworks. It's startling, it's jarring. It, you know, puts them back into that mindset that they're, you know, possibly overseas somewhere where they had a combat trauma. And it can create anxiety and unnecessary conflict that could have ultimately been avoided if the caregiver just would have had that mindfulness to say, you know, I can't take this individual into a communal shower. You know, World War II veterans are slowly, unfortunately, leaving us. But those people that liberated concentration camps and walked into those walls of those barracks and things like that, you cannot put them in a communal shower in a nursing facility. It is very traumatic, extremely. You cannot wake them up from a dead sleep, especially if they have dementia. Things like that, just that mindfulness is the biggest piece, I think, and just to be respectful of who they are, the legacy, you know, that they have, the story they have to tell that makes them an individual and deserving of compassion, care, respect, you know, and that goes across the board, veteran or not.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the theme I'm hearing is communication and understanding the person that you're taking care of.
Correct.
I think that is a crucial part, you know, because when you think about conflict, even minor conflict with even your child as you're trying to parent, that conflict comes from like maybe misunderstanding or non-communication.
Right.
And then you add a whole layer of a veteran status. You know, I could see how things could escalate really quickly into elder abuse if you don't take some time to really research and figure out how to communicate with the veteran. Now, I know you spend, I'm meeting you somewhere next week. Tell me a little bit about, I know where it's at, I can see it in Merritt Island, but tell me a little bit about that space and what they do there for our veterans.
Well, what you're referring to is the Veterans Memorial Center, and it is located on Merritt Island behind the Merritt Island Square Mall. And if you're looking for it, it's quite obvious because there's helicopters and old Army artifacts, relics, things like that. It is an amazing facility and that it is very diversified in what it has to offer our community. There is an actual museum that chronologically is laid out to where there's representation and artifacts and documented history of each conflict that we've been involved in as an American military. There is a new piece, I shouldn't say new, but they just received a piece of the Pentagon from 9/11 is there now. There's a rather large piece of the USS Arizona from the Pearl Harbor. But also within that, so it's great to, just take your children, loved ones, grandchildren, students. I know some of the assisted livings take field trips there, just again, so we don't lose that history, continue to educate yourself on what individuals have been through. But there's also veteran service officers there. And veteran service officers are golden. They are the individuals that you can tap into to help veterans either apply for VA reimbursements, aid and attendance, get involved in the VA clinic here locally. Maybe they don't realize they're entitled to some health care and can go to the VA clinics to get their medications and their wellness visits and things like that. So these men and women that volunteer there Monday through Friday, usually I think it's from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. And it's like kind of a walk-in situation, and they, take you as you come. And if you have a DD-214, great, bring it. If you don't, come with a social security number and kind of a range of the dates that you served or your loved ones served. If you're power of attorney, you can go on behalf of the individual if they can't travel there themselves. And they're phenomenal people.
Awesome. And these resources are extremely important. That's why I'm talking about them. And as you're watching this, we're going to try to get it up on Sunday evening of this week. Again, if you have any questions, we'll make sure that we provide information for you to reach out to any of these women that are on this panel to answer any questions. Jennifer, I want to roll over to you now. I love your background now. San Francisco is one of my favorite cities. So I know you go into the homes a lot, correct?
Yes.
So when you're in the home and you're with a family, what are some common risk factors you're looking at that might bring to the forefront that elder abuse could be happening or is already, it might be coming down the pike? What kind of things do you see?
Okay. Well, first of all, let me apologize for the movement. My internet went out 19 hours ago, and I need to work from home I cannot work without my internet. So Spencer came out to provide some immediate help. So, but anyway, to answer your question is, caregivers' perception that taking care of the elderly has become a burdensome, and they don't have the psychological wherewith of, if they got to do this all the time, or, can I get the person into a nursing facility? Can I just, I can't, I am the caregiver, but then I can't do this. This is a lot of work. And mainly it's the wives taking care of the spouses that I've seen on my part. And sometimes it's flipped around. But for my caseload, most of it are the wives taking care of the spouse. And it's a lot of work, and they're older, and they're frail themselves. Mm-hmm. And I find that they can't do a lot. They find out they can't do this on their own. So now they're wanting to put the individual in the nursing facility, and it doesn't work that way. Their inability to cope with stress, because they're old, stress is just not good for them at all. And to be a caregiver, they found that the risk factors are, it's just the lack of support from their children. Maybe they didn't have a lot of contact with their children before they got older. And now that they're older, they don't have no contact with children. And therefore, it's just husband and wife on their own. Or they've migrated from the north to the south, and nobody's coming here to visit that like that. Mm-hmm. And they find themselves.
Oh, no. I think we lost her.
Well, I guess to continue in that same line with Jennifer is that taking on too much and not realizing that sometimes the best caregiver is the one who goes out and finds all the services to do those daily kind of things and to get that help, or to take the person to an adult daycare center. A lot of people, they won't like that. Well, you don't know if that person's going to like it until they go there. And they might run into somebody else who has background very similar to theirs, and they're happy to have that socialization and to be able to be around other people, and gives that caregiver that hour to just go sit or take a nap or any of those other things that are needed. But just that the family, sometimes you're taking on too much, say, you know, feeling that you should have to do that, you know, that to honor this person, that you should do it all yourself. And that's not always the best way. The best way is to make sure that all that person's needs are being met, no matter who it is that you get to meet them, and to make sure that the people that you've involved and invited into this person's life are the best people and are treating them with dignity and respect, and finding out all those background issues so they don't startle them, come up behind them, all those other things. That's your job as a caregiver, is to make sure they get the best care, not necessarily that you're hands-on giving it.
Can I just offer it's kind of a flip of that situation that I encountered in one of my classes that I was teaching. And it was a woman, I mean, she's just the tiniest little thing, you know, very quiet. Well, she was taking care of her husband who had dementia. And I mean, she really looked like a wreck. And in these classes, we kind of develop trust, we get conversations going. Well, it turns out that he was one of these people that had the bad kind of dementia, where you can get mean, nasty, abusive. And she was, you know, she had that sense of duty. She's his wife. She had to take care of him. But it was a very bad situation for her. And she was able to get into a senior mental health program where she got enrolled in a support group. And she came back, honestly, she came back from one week to the next looking like a different person, because she was getting the support that she needed. You know, he was still there. He was still not being very nice to her, but she had some backup and some people that she could talk to about her situation. And it really made all the difference in the world. And I think that we really have to look at, there's so many different situations where our older people need mental health care.
Exactly.
For one reason or another. And there is so little of it out there for them. You know, we think people get to the end of their life, they've been through all kinds of things, they figured out how to cope. It just gets harder. It gets harder when you're older.
I agree.
Both physically, emotionally. You know, you lose friends, you lose family. So it's a huge issue in our community. And I think that, yeah, we just need to be very, very aware of that.
I think that's where Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation does very well in helping to explain to caregivers and people what's going on in that progression of the disease. I'm so sorry. The progression of the disease. And also in the memory health disorder clinics, and talking to people about, this is where you are now, this is where it's going to go. And how do you take that next step, and preparing the family and getting those caregiver supports in place. Because to understand, this person is not angry with you, they're not upset with you, they're more angry with themselves. And if you think about it, if you woke up every morning and didn't know who you were and who this person is next to you telling you do this, do that, and acting like they know you and you don't know them,
Right.
Yeah.
I could get pretty testy too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that also plays right into that soul injury piece. You know, those individuals may not necessarily have a dementia, an underlying, you know, memory issue or anything, but as they're working through, especially those final stages of life, which we, are blessed to be able to be a part of and walk through at Hospice of St. Francis, they are working through forgiving themselves. They are working through, coming to terms with things that they may have done or may have been asked to do that normally, again, like I said, wouldn't have necessarily been able to do on an everyday basis. And that can create a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, and it can manifest and show itself through anger, grief, frustration. And usually, the targets of those emotions are the ones closest to us. And at that time, that's your spouse or your caregiver or your child, and so therefore, a conflict arises, and, it can just, create some adversary that, normally maybe wouldn't have been there. But with that mental health piece, like you said, and having, a licensed mental health social worker or professional or a clinical social worker, chaplains, huge resource for people right now too, just saying, you have to be able to let go of some of that, and people who are in the early stages of dementia, like you mentioned, Theresa, who are beginning to become aware that they're going to be, absent-minded and not have the wherewithal to know the person that may be coming in to help them. That creates huge amounts of anxiety, fear, again, manifesting and showing itself in anger, conflict. So
It's scary to feel that you're losing control.
absolutely.
Or anyone at any age.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you have somebody who, especially your ex-military or your people who were in positions, very high positions in their jobs, that they were always in control of a lot of people. And now to realize they have little to no control over their minds, but over their situation, they become angry with anybody who's trying to help them through that.
Yeah.
And this kind of leads, we're glad you're back, Jennifer. We're glad you're back.
This was not the morning. I am so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We're all adjusting to this new lifestyle. I have to have my 17-year-old give me Zoom lessons, so, and all this stuff. So this kind of leads into, Amanda, back at you. How does elder abuse play out when hospice is involved? Do we know, as hospice can come in and things start to go they progress quickly, and there's a lot of stress involved. There's a lot of family coming in and out. You add the dynamics of what's happening with the will, and it just turns into a huge mess sometimes. So what do you see, not necessarily even veterans, just anyone in particular, abuse come into play as we go towards the path of death?
Well, I will, say there are situations where people come out of the woodwork, if you will. The individual that is the patient, hasn't seen this child for 10, 15 years. And, this other child has been the primary caregiver. And suddenly they're like, oh, wow, my sibling who I haven't talked to in 10 years is coming and trying to direct things. And, what the biggest problem lies if they aren't prepared on the front end, if they don't have living wills, power of attorneys, all those things set up in place. Because what happens is, and Theresa, you can speak to this, I know, working for the state, the proxy piece comes into play, which that automatically defaults to either the spouse, next of kin, eldest child. But again, that eldest child may have been completely absent. But if there's no formal paperwork in place, that's who they're turning to for these decisions. And of course, that may not be for the best interest of the individual that you're serving. So that's just one very brief example, and one way to just kind of really push. And as a social worker, of course, I encourage people, get your advance directives in place. There are some very, very simple one-page documents that can cover everything. Feel free to call me. I have them. They're online, very easily accessible. In the state of Florida, they only require 2 witnesses. They don't even require notarization sometimes. So very, very, very simple box to check, even though it's a little bit, people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to say the hospice word, but trust me, the more pre-planning you do, the easier things are, and the less likelihood of conflict and arguments you may have between family members, caregivers, loved ones to, what's do right for the best, of that individual. Well, that individual then, like Theresa said again, keeps control of their choices. They're written on paper. You have to abide by them. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is the sooner you recognize that you might need a resource such as hospice, home health, you don't have to jump right into hospice or palliative care, but 9 times out of 10, what we hear back from clients that we have served is, I wish I had called you sooner.
Yeah.
I wish I had called you sooner. And like you experienced, Marty, they're there to help. The ultimate driver of the bus of the interdisciplinary approach that hospice service providers take is the primary caregiver, is the patient, if they can make their own choices. You are in control of that person. You are in control of your own well-being. And Hospice of St. Francis mission statement is uplifting lives, uplifting each other, uplifting the community. And every hospice organization, I think it is their passion, their mission to provide quality of life, not necessarily quantity, but quality. Have peaceful moments with your loved ones. Be able to experience, now we're able to do it through virtual reality, things that you may have wanted to do. And the sooner you tap into those resources that are freely available, the more you can utilize them to the degree that they're really, they have so much potential. There's so much out there, that, like I said earlier, there's chaplaincy services, volunteer services, pet therapy, music therapy, massage therapy. There's a doctor or a nurse practitioner that will come to your home monthly, a nurse that will come to your house weekly, an aide that will come to your house several times a week. There's respite opportunities where you see yourself getting to that state where, you need to collapse down in the front yard in the grass and just be like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Well, we can come and say, let me take mom to the care center up in Titusville for 5 days, drive up to St. Augustine, go to the beach, have a staycation. Free.
It's okay to do that. Yeah.
It's very much okay. It's necessary. It's necessary to do that.
Yeah, and I think that too, it allows, for me, in my personal experience, the death was a very, I don't know what the word is, but it was spiritual almost for me.
Sure.
So, to have all of these safety checklists in place, making sure we know exactly what our loved one wants, making sure that the family understands, allows our family member to pass away in dignity.
Yeah.
And with the people around them that are holding their hands and going, we're all going to be okay. And I think that peels back so many layers and just takes away so much conflict that could turn into elder abuse in the last few days. So yeah. I am very much a big supporter of hospice programs. They do amazing work and we appreciate what you're doing. So Paula, I wanted to ask you a question because I know you're a communication manager and you do a lot of outreach in the community, but why do you think that this is such an invisible problem? Why is it not in the forefront?
Because older people are basically invisible in our society, I think. We tend to not, and I'm saying just we as a community, as a society, tend not to want to see people getting older, getting more frail, having health problems, dental problems. They can't see, they can't drive right, they walk too slow in the grocery store. They're just kind of a nuisance and would rather not, to a lot of people, and would rather just not see them. And the other part of it is that a lot of our elderly population, the most frail, most vulnerable, really are invisible because they're in their homes. They are homebound. They don't get out. They don't, not that a lot of us are going out that much now, but just generally, they're not out and about. A lot of our people that we serve on Meals on Wheels live alone. They have no family, no one really checking up on them. It's just our volunteer bringing that meal 5 days a week that is at least stopping by and saying, hello, are you okay? But a lot of people, unless their neighbors are checking on them, really nobody sees them. And so, maybe they do have a child that lives in a different state or something, and they've turned over their finances to that child. Well, you don't know. They might all of a sudden, all their assets have been drained, and now, they can't afford to do upkeep on their homes. You can kind of see it when you're walking around or driving around in neighborhoods. What are the most rundown, neglected properties? Chances are that's an older person who really has no resources. So things like that is just, opening your eyes and wondering, why is that? What's going on there? We've had situations where our volunteers have reported concerns, and we'll call THERESA's office and have, DCF go out and do an investigation. We have, people like Jennifer, she can talk more about this. Our case managers can go out and meet with people and find out what resources that they need. But like Amanda said, and like THERESA said, a lot of people don't know what the resources are in our community. And that's one of the roles of our agencies, is to get that information out there. Legal aid,
And I think another
housing
part
assistance.
of that invisibility is if a person is being cared by someone who is abusing them, they may not speak up and they may hide it because their fears they're going to be put into a facility.
Yes.
And not realizing, facilities have a bad rep. I have a lot of people, when I was an investigator, would tell me, no way I'm going to one, no way I'm going to one, not going to happen. And the family would tell me, no way you're going to get my mom or dad to go there. And I would say to the person, okay, how about, I have to go do something, take a ride with me, and would go by a facility and pull up front. And I try to go around lunchtime or dinner time when people were sharing and being together. And then the person, well, what's this? I'm not going there. And then, you can wait. And well, I'll go in with you. And sometimes the people would go in and see who's at the facility and what the people are doing. And they'd be like, could I move in here? And their family would be like, we're never going to go. It's like, because they didn't know. They just didn't know what that facility is. It's not just a place to go and be alone. It's a place to go be social. When you're being isolated because you're stuck at home, here are people just like you. We're not isolated. Now we have somebody to talk to and to spend time with. And people are you get to be the prince or the princess. They're bringing your food, they'll help you, they'll do those things. So educating people on that, that fear of you're going to remove me from my home. Well, sometimes that I guess the reality of home is not such a great place to be if you're being abused or neglected, or you don't have food, or your lights aren't going, or it's hot all the time, or it's cold all the time, all those things.
Yeah,
So,
or there's mold in your house, or, it hasn't been cleaned in 10 years. And there are a lot of situations like that.
And I have to piggyback off of Paula. When you talk about the homes that are not, how can I put, unsanitary conditions, the yard, the environmental, exterior, interior, and they are, homebound. Being in a facility help cultivate, they're not alone. They can play games, it's social. They can do a lot of things that, they wouldn't ordinarily get from personal experience. We had to make a decision to place our mom in a facility last November. She suffered a stroke 6 years ago. She declining because she didn't want the physical therapist in her home. Insurance only covers so many days. After those days, you go home. Well, you have 3 daughters. I'm the farthest away. So I'm flying out, you know, trying to meet with people. My sister's a teacher, you know, just so many dynamics to the caregiver part, because caregivers can be located all over the world. One parent can be living somewhere else. And in our situation, we did everything we could, but because of her mindset, she's older in age, and she wasn't, you know, privy to someone coming in and out of her home to do therapy. Well, the only way you're going to get consistent therapy and to rise above the stroke is to, you know, do everything you need to do to stay healthy. And that was declined. And so for over the 6 years, it went downhill until we had to make a decision. One decision was to come be with me. No, she didn't want to be with me. You know, I had children, and, you know, they get in that age and they don't want to be bothered with kids all the time. Well, I couldn't eliminate my children from home. So we had to make the decision that when she took her last fall, and it was so scary because we didn't know she had fallen. She had been on the floor for a day. My sister usually checks on her daily, or either she goes to the community center, which they were picking her up. Well, this particular day, she didn't go. They call, you know, she's in the floor at home on the floor. So we're like, that's it. You're alone. Anything could have transpired and happened where you could have fell and hit your head in a bad place and not recover. So we had to make a decision to place her in a placement, and she did not want to go. But after going and visiting and talking and many weeks of speaking with her and getting her to go from the, not to bring her home from the hospital, but to make sure the hospital sent her right to the nursing facility, was getting her confidence level to go there and to be comfortable. Once she got there and we said, okay, this is therapy, we knew that we were going to have to leave her there. But the transitioning period was so much easier, because now she's like, I'm not by myself. I have a roommate. I get to talk to somebody every day instead of calling my kids 30 times a day to talk to them. I get to go play bingo. I get to go to church. Yeah. And that was a big factor of hers, is I'm not going to get to go to church. They're not going to be able to pick me up. Well, they brought church to her. Yeah. And that was great. And she got her meals. She get her meals every day. She gets snacks. And of course, we're just whining and dining her with all types of things before the COVID. And now she said, oh my goodness, now I don't have any visitation, because we were used to going to visit her. My sister went every day because she was only 15 minutes away. But that also took a release off my sister, because she was the ultimate caregiver there by herself, because I'm in Florida. Me and my baby sister are here. So that did give her a relief to say, oh my God, I don't have to do this every single day. And I know she's okay. If I don't go to the nursing home once out of the week, then she's still okay. Yeah. She's going to get her medications. They're going to know if she fell, you know, she's going to get that comfort that she needs, and that we're so comfortable within ourselves with. But it also takes us still being me still managing her case. Like, she's there, but I'm still, like, you know, on top of things. Like, I won't let it go unnoted or unsaid, you know. So you have to see those things to make sure, Paula, that they do remain visible and not invisible.
Yeah. Well, and I'm hearing the same vein here, is that, you know, we're lifting up our voices, which is what we're doing here, is we're lifting up our voices to talk about elder abuse and talk about different situations, that the underlying factor here, it's mental health, and making sure that your elder is happy, healthy, that the caregivers are happy and healthy, and that you're reaching out to local agencies to get the help that you need. So I kind of want to start to wrap up a little bit. I know we could talk about this for days, and it's been such great information that I'm super excited to share this. But Theresa, can you answer for us, if we do see elder abuse, or we might suspect something going on, maybe with our neighbor or family or loved one, what do we do to report it?
Okay. Well, granted, some things I'd say. how can you help? How do you report? So you need to call the hotline. If the person is in imminent danger, if you're seeing them being threatened or harmed right then, call 911. That's an emergency call. But if you suspect it, then you need to call the hotline, which is 1-800-962-2873. Or the easy way to remember is 1-800-96-ABUSE. You can also make your reports online at reportabuse.dcf.state.florida.us. And you can fax in a report. So there are all those ways in which to do it. But you need to provide specific information, and it's essential to provide accurate demographics and the locations of the victim of the report. Provide collateral sources and contact information, who the investigator can contact to get more information if you're just not sure. If all you have is a tag number, then give us the tag number. We can follow it down from there. There are ways for us to get that information. If you know the address, you know, I went by, or I go visit my friend, and next door I'm hearing all this, then get the proper address and we can go out with that. We need as much as you can give us as a name, age, physical or mental description, infirmities, location where they're going to be for the next 24 hours, name and address of any family members that you know of, name and address of the alleged perpetrator who is committing the offenses against that person. We also have self-neglect, which is you see somebody who just is living in that home that's not meeting their own needs. Maybe they just don't have the funds, or maybe they just don't know who to contact and they're afraid to contact anybody for fear they're going to be taken out of their home if they seek help, try to seek help. Description of this physical or psychological injuries that you have witnessed, and a description of the abuse, neglect, exploitation, including any signs. This is a person maybe that's always had their lights, always dressed well. Now all of a sudden, their lights seem to be off all the time. Their clothes aren't fitting so well. Either they've lost weight or their clothes are dirty or ripped. And any other information available to you that can help us establish abuse, neglect, or exploitation. A lot of people, when you go out to investigate it, they're in denial themselves, that either they're self-neglecting or that somebody's abusing them for all the reasons we've talked about today, that they're a fear of losing control over their own life. Just want to give you some statistics. In 2019, in the state of Florida, there was 1,838, excuse me, that was Brevard. Brevard last year, I had 1,838 cases reported. Statewide, we had 47,500 cases reported. Now, within those cases, you could have many different allegations of abuse, that it could have been physical and mental along, or other things. I would like to say, because of COVID, we've seen a decline in the number of cases we've gotten this year. We haven't. They're tracking this year monthly about the same amount we had last year. Currently, we've had over 769 cases of reports issued through the abuse hotline.
Theresa,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
can I ask you a question, Theresa? Out of the 900 plus cases that have been reported this year, how many of those cases that really have stayed open, or do you know the stats on them being open or closed out because they didn't find abuse, or are these cases where they were open and they had abusers or were abused or exploited or neglected?
Okay. Within 60 days of a case being opened, it has to close by federal statute, unless we have something like maybe we're waiting for a report from the medical examiner, or we're waiting for state's attorney's office. If we're working with the state's attorney's office on an exploitation case, where we're getting more information from banks and we're having to get subpoenas and things to get bank records. but normally our cases are closed within 60 days. So
Okay.
anything that came in January would have already been closed. Statewide findings, let's see, about 14% of cases are verified that some abuse has occurred.
Okay.
26% of cases are some indicators, but not necessarily do we know who did it or that we can prove who did it. So it wouldn't be verified. But it's so larger amount of cases are closed with no indicators. But in those cases, that's okay because hopefully we've gone out and given service referrals.
Okay.
Because something was going on that attracted somebody's attention in most cases. So we were able to help the person get some services to correct it.
Okay.
So it's not a great amount of cases that come back verified, which is good.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Because they figure only 10% of actual abuse, adult abuse, neglect, exploitation cases are even reported.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
So we will make sure when we post this that we have the resources up to get some information if you need it. We also have a caregiver book. Our 2021 edition is supposed to be here today. So if you have, yay, yeah, that's a project for Marty. You know, once we get those, please feel free to reach out to us on our social media site or email or any way you need help. We want to be there to help you. And our whole goal today was to understand that we're here. We're here to help. We're here to lift up our voices. We're here to provide support. We're just either a phone call, a visit away. And we want to continue to support our community.
Marty, can I jump in on that and just say one more thing, a little more positive? Then I'm feeling a little bad that I said, oh, we're not even seeing older people. We do in this community. We have enormous amounts of resources available, agencies, companies.
We do.
And I want to give a special shout out to the cities of Satellite Beach and Cape Canaveral, which are designated livable communities
That's
for people who are aging. And they've made a real commitment to, you know, everything from the lighting that they put up, sidewalks. Satellite Beach has a community medic that goes out and visits people. And so, and they're having a real impact on the rest of Brevard as
They
well.
are. And they were super kind. A lot of our municipality police departments did a special video for us during this week, actually. So make sure to go to our Facebook page. They talk about symptoms and signs of elder abuse, as well as resources in their community, like Satellite Beach. So pop onto our Facebook. Susan did a great job this week with making sure that we got some really great information out there. But again, ladies, you are leaders in our community. I appreciate everything that you're doing. And we're going to try to do these kind of panel discussions on different topics moving forward. So I'm sure I'll be reaching out to all of you again about a different topic. But in the meantime, have a great weekend, everybody. And thank you for joining.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.